Oh, wait, there's a folding chair. Why don't you put this those folding chairs in there?
I'm okay, Jan.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Take this one. You live in this rocking chair?
Okay, I'll move.
Well,
Okay.
no, I'll tell you what else too. We can do the pan after the fact.
Okay.
We can just leave the camera on him the whole time, finish it, and then if you want a pan, we'll get you out of there, and we'll just do a pan after the fact.
Okay.
We can edit that in at that point.
Okay. Are you getting a shadow on his face from his hat?
A little bit. I think it looks
His hat's
fine.
not doing
Like
any
it?
good.
Okay.
His hat's not doing him any good right at this point anyway.
I know that for a too low, it's no good
Would it
either.
bother you if it were off?
Does it bother you?
No, that'd be all right.
Okay.
The plant's better over here, right?
We're fine. Okay, anytime you want to start, Mr. Salvatore, you just go ahead and start.
I always have somebody here that I can talk to, though.
Okay. How about if I go up here? Okay. Okay, you talk to me. How's that?
Let her rip.
See, I can start off. In 1928, when the warning came that the hurricane was coming, you got to remember that them days, we didn't have the facilities that we have today. Most of the people here in Pahokee didn't know what a hurricane was. So we decided in talking with McClure and a few other neighbors and all what to do, we decided to stay. Because we didn't know what the consequences were of a hurricane. So by staying, why, the hurricane hit around 7:30 in the evening, and we just figured it was an equinoctial storm. On account of the wind was only around 50, 55 miles an hour. So we all went home and stayed with our families. But eventually the gusts start coming, and the house started shaking, and it started heaving, and we finally got scared, and we started whether to leave the house or whether to not leave the house. So the children were all. One of my daughters was in the bed, and one of my sons was in a chair, and every time a gust of wind would come in the house would heave, why the daughter was in the bed would holler to the son in the chair, says, "Carmen." Yeah, his name was Carmen too. And so Junior would say, "Mary," and by that time Mary would be under the cover. So that continued till eventually Mary finally says, "What is it, Junior?" And he says, "The Lord's asleep." So that was one of the cutest things. It kind of brought a laugh. So finally it got so severe that we had to leave the house. And leaving the house, we got behind the ridge. The wind was coming off the lake, and the waves started coming in, and eventually the lake started going over the ridge. Well, that's when we got scared, and we went towards the road. Well, we got them days, there was a ditch between my house and the road, to build a roadbed. And we had a driveway just wide enough, about 8 feet wide. But it was so dark, and the rain was so thick that you couldn't see your hand in front of your face within, say, 6 inches from in front of your face. And the consequences were you had to wipe the rain off your face by that time. So we had, I think we had 4 children that time, didn't we? I had 2 of them, and Mary had, my wife had 2 of them. So we decided to stay under a big rubber tree, right there in the driveway where as you go into Skeet's house. So I said, "That's dangerous." I said, "We can't stay there." I said, "Let's go behind the ridge on the muck side." So we got over there, and then we finally got there, and the first thing you know, the wind started blowing harder. The Lake Okeechobee started coming over the ridge, and we went for the road. So when we got on the road, the wind was so intense and so strong that we couldn't stand up. So we had to go sit down on the highway and cuddle ourselves together and hold each other together to stay and maintain our position. So we haunched our way up towards Pahokee, and at that time there used to be a ditch on the other side of the road, and the wind coming off the lake would drive us towards that ditch. So then we had to turn and tack back to the east side of the highway, to the west side of the highway, and then go north. Well, it took us an hour and 20 minutes to make 900 feet. So when we got to McClure's house, we went to the house, and McClure was on his ground, hands and knees. I says, Mac, I said, where are you going? He says, we're fixing to leave the house. I says, there's no use of leaving the house. I says, we just come from there. There's no place to go out there. He says, you got a windbreak here with the house. We better hang on to the house. So he come off and got straightened up in the vacuum behind the house, and we went inside, and the house was loaded with people. And his house was a two-story house with a concrete foundation, but the house was off the foundation, the piling was through the floor, and the house was off level. So we stayed there during the night, until the lull came. So I talked to McClure, telling him about the family of Mr. and Mrs. Hunter. They were in their late 80s, and very feeble. Either one of them been way over 100 pounds. And I promised to go over and see them before the hurricane struck. And the consequences were, when the hurricane struck, it was so sudden that I didn't have an opportunity to get there. So we went to the house, and there was nobody there. And the water then went through the house, busted the doors and windows, and just washed everything out of the first floor of the house into the backyard. So we went down the ridge and calling their names, and we couldn't get an answer. We went down about a quarter of a mile. By that time, the wind started changing. I said to McClure, I said, we better get back to the house because the second part of the hurricane is going to hit us. And so we did. And we got to the house before the hurricane struck. And we stayed in the house until the hurricane was over with. And when the hurricane was over with, we were dumbfounded. In the eye of the hurricane, there's nothing but a vacuum. There's no wind, there's no life, there's no. You figure you're in a world to yourself without a living evidence of life of no description, and it's a very funny feeling. That's the best I can describe it. It's just like as if you're in a vacuum with nothing around you, with no life around you. You're all by yourself. That's the best way I can describe it. So we went to Pahokee, and the following morning, the first thing we did, we went down, when daylight came, we went down to hunt to Mr. and Mrs. Hunter. We found Mrs. Hunter within 20 feet of where we went down the ridge, hanging on to a bunch of bushes and tree roots. And she was so weak she couldn't talk. And she said that she heard us, but she couldn't answer us. She was so weak. And then we found her husband out there in a field about 2,000 feet away from the ridge, about 1,500 feet away from the ridge, hanging on to a dead cow. And so we got Mr. Hunter in, and we got Mrs. Hunter in. We got them both to Canal Pahokee, and we organized a citizen committee and to handle the affairs, because the city was broke and we had to have some leadership. And during that day, the governor sent the National Guards in, and the sheriffs got their deputies out here, and the speedboats started coming out of West Palm Beach by canal. The Connors Highway was blocked off, and the Belle Glade Road was blocked off, and the railroad trestle and tracks and beds were washed away, and so we were just isolated here. And so the first thing we did was organize labor crews to go out and bury the dead. And then we got the balance of them to clean up the dirt that's on the highways, to clear the highways up. And well, then it took 2 weeks. It took us 2 weeks to get the town where we had the connect back to each other's community, and they opened up the road from West Palm Beach and Okeechobee, and so the rehabilitation took us 2 weeks to clean up the roads and the highways and get the people back together again. But there's one other factor that I wanted to mention, and that is the early days of the hurricane. After the hurricane hit and stopped, it was the communication with the people that came back alive and came back all nervous and excited. And every time you talked to a person, each one told you a horrible story, what they went through the night. But every time you could come to the next person that had the story would be more horrible than the one previously. And that's the way it was all the way through. And we buried 2,700 people between Canal Point and Clewiston and Lake Harbor during that 2 weeks. And the first 5 days, we hauled the bodies to West Palm Beach and Port Miacca. But after that, we burnt the bodies out in the fields. Well, it wasn't a field. The water was over the land. It was more like a lake. From Pahokee to Lake Harbor was a plumb lake, about 2 feet deep. The water was all over the land.
You told us a story about when you were going up the road and you were carrying the baby. You had wasn't your little girl?
Oh, yeah, well.
Tell us that story.
Yeah. When the water started coming over the ridge, we decided to hit the road. Well, there was a canal. There was a ditch dug between the road and my lawn here, and there was also a ditch dug alongside of my driveway from the ridge to the road, which now is all filled up now. And while we were walking to get to the road, I fell into the ditch with the babies, with the 2 babies, and my wife, through instinct, when I fell in, she didn't move. She stayed right where she was, and I had the presence of mind and position to turn around at the right angle and all and throw the kids towards her. But although I couldn't see her, I threw the kids towards her and she pulled the kids up on the highway. I mean on the driveway. And so when we got to McClure's, although my daughter doesn't believe what I'm going to say, Iris was in my arms, and of course I never dreamed that she was facing the wind and the rain, and she sucked enough water into it when we got to McClure's house that we had to revive her, although she claims that's not so. But at least we thought that we'd have stayed out. We'd have stayed another 10, 15 minutes out in that hurricane. I don't believe she'd have been alive. But I had no idea that she, instead of turning her head back to the wind, she kept her face towards it. And I didn't know that. I had other problems on my mind. My mind. Yeah. Well, then we formed committees, and during them committees, I was a field. I worked the crew in the fields with water up to my knees and above, taking care of the dead bodies. And then I finally got a problem of feeding the men. We had 400 men working on the roads and details in the community and outside of the community, and we had to feed them. They slept in an old schoolhouse we had here at where the park is now, where the library is now, is a four-room, one roof building with a room in each corner. And we had the laborers sleeping under the schoolhouse that was on the foundation above the ground. And then we had them also sleeping in there. And that's where, and we had to feed them. So the man that was in charge, a man named Baker, there was a colonel a captain in the National Guard. We put him in charge of maintaining law and order and keeping the people from stealing whatever the people had left. And so him and I were very friendly, and he talked to me one night and said, we're having a problem feeding these men at night. And I says, can you handle it? I said, yeah, I can handle it. I says, I know how we fed the army in World War I. I says, there's no problem at all. So I arranged the cooking process, and also stopped people from stealing the groceries. People were stealing the groceries, and all they had was beans. They had nothing else. And so I stopped that, and so the consequences are we finally got more cooperation out of the labor, and we finished the job in 2 weeks. What else? Is there anything else you want to know? Oh yeah, there's one thing that I would like to emphasize, and that is for anybody that gets in a hurricane, is when the winds of the hurricane become a part of the hurricane wherever you are, is to face the hurricane and put your right hand out parallel with your shoulder, and that's where your hurricane is. And then whatever you do, you always want to go in the opposite direction. If it's in the east, you go west. And if it's in the west, you go east. And if your indicator indicates the south, well, go north. And that way you can avoid a hurricane. Yeah, but yeah. Yeah. Whatever you want, I'll do it.
How old is that old apple tree?
How's that?
How old is that custard apple tree?
Well, it was there when I first came here, and I came here in 1919.
Was it a big tree then?
Well, it was, I'll say half the size it is now. Now that there are custard apple trees. All this ground out here was all custard apples. I had to clear that 5 acres right there with them custard apples in it. It's solid.
Okay, I think we've got a tractor that we're competing with now. I think we've got... It started raining. I was 20 miles. I would have had, I was in Okeechobee. I had walked.
Standing up, I was still holding on to
Go back. Go back. What? I told Miss Van Horn, Miss Vanlandingham it would be sometime after lunch, and then I would call them when I saw how the filming went in the morning and tell them a definite time. You know, I told them around lunchtime because I
Sorry.
didn't know how long the morning filming would take. That was when we were planning on doing Bernie up at Lake Harbor.
So are we going to do them? We're going to get them and take
We're going to get them and take them. The Belle Glade lot. Well, chosen lot.
Anytime.
You ready? Okay, if you would just start by just telling us, like I said before, about the warning that you had about the storm, anything you remember about that, and what happened, you know, if you want just kind of chronologically, how, you know, what you did and how it happened.
Well, my uncle, as I say, had a boat line, and he took the mail from all around and the beans and things over to Lewiston. So he had a barometer, and he could see the barometer was falling. And he came and warned everybody, went to everybody's house and told them to get on the boat. It was going to be a bad storm. So most of us did. Some of them didn't. But that's the reason we got on the boat, because we had this warning, the barometer falling.
She's not looking off to the side. I've got this pretty tight. How about if you break it right
Okay.
here? It'll make it look more like she's looking into the camera.
Okay.
Looking like she's looking up.
How's the sound? Does it sound
Sits.
good?
I haven't checked the sound. I'm sure it's fine.
You got my hand?
I got the top here.
Okay. Wait. You see the ball spot? What about this? Still got me?
Okay, right from the top.
Okay.
From the top down.
Start again.
All over again.
This is take two. Take two. Okay.
My uncle had a boat line, and he, with that barometer, and he knew that the barometer was falling, and that there was going to be a bad storm. So he went from house to house telling everybody to get on the boat, that we were going to have a bad storm. So we all got on.
Do you have warnings, Mrs. Van Horn?
Yes, we had warning.
It was her uncle that came to you and told you about it?
No, I think my husband was working for that boat line, and I think he probably helped the uncle go around and warn people.
How old were you when this happened? You were
14. I must have been either 19 or 20.
And you were married to Mr. Van Horn then?
Yes.
Could you just tell us about what it was like on the boat? You know, like how many people and what you did and where you went and what the storm itself was like?
Well, there really isn't much to say. The boat was crowded. Those that could not stand had chairs.
There was
A lot of
over
us.
100.
Yeah, I thought there were around 200. But we stood, and the minister and his wife were on the boat, and so we sang some hymns when it got real bad, and just tried to keep up conversation, and felt safe. I did.
Was there any point
And there was some groceries on the boat that they managed to fix us a bite of breakfast anyway.
Was there any point where you felt like the boat was going to capsize or there was trouble?
No, I really didn't. Maybe I didn't know that much.
You know, we read your husband's story about him having to pump the water because the water was coming up in the boat and the men were pumping.
There was a bilge pump out on the deck, right in the storm, and he sat out there and hung on to the pump to keep from blowing away, and kept it running. As a rule, if it got damp, it wouldn't run. But he was pouring gasoline or oil or something on it to keep it running.
And the other men were all bailing water.
Yeah, down in the bilge, they were bailing with buckets.
About what time of day did you go on the boat?
Early evening, about dark, wasn't it?
I really can't remember. I know we were on it all night long, so it must have been early evening. It
was just before
still
dark
light,
that I remember getting on.
Do you remember any of the other people who were on the boat with you?
How's that?
Do you remember any of the other people who were on the boat?
Oh, Edith and her family, and I'd have to think to tell
Who was
you.
in your family?
The McAllisters and Walkers, yes. And some of them had relatives that did not come on the boat, and the next morning they were gone. That was too bad.
I had 3 sisters, and one of my brothers was over in Chosen, so he wasn't on the boat. I'm not sure whether my younger brother was with us or not. He may have been off to school. But there were the three of us girls.
What was it like the next day when it came light and you got off the boat?
It's terrible.
Yes, it was awful. And when we couldn't go to Belle Glade anyway but walk, so we walked to Belle Glade with all the debris and sometimes some bodies. And then they met us there and took us into West Palm Beach to a hotel in West Palm Beach and gave us something to eat. Then they took us down to Hollywood. And Hollywood kept us at a hotel down there a week or more. It's about time for school to start, so I know my sister and I went to, my older sister and I went to the Methodist Church in West Palm Beach, which was about a block from the high school, and started high school there. And then we moved into West Palm Beach that year where our house was being rebuilt, and finished that year in West Palm.
Well, my husband's mother and father were on the boat because he thought, he believed it was going to be a bad storm, and they lived up the lake shore, Bean City they called it. So he went and got them, and sure enough, could hardly find anything where they lived the next day. But we were always so thankful that he had that forethought and went and got them.
Did you leave and go to West Palm also?
No, my folks were living in Clewiston, and I went to Clewiston and stayed with them.
When you went to Belle Glade, did you, Mrs. McCormick told us that they went to the Fierce Hotel and stayed like one night, and then they had to walk out to the experiment station. Did you have to do that, or?
No, they took us in that day that we went in.
The cars were coming into Belle Glade?
Yeah. I don't remember spending any night in Belle Glade. It seemed like we went that same day.
Was the road clear, or was
they had cleared it enough so that they could get the cars in and out.
So the water must have gone down pretty quickly after the storm. Will you be able to get to Belle Glade by walking? Did you walk through water to get there? Or?
No, it was down below the road. We walked on the road.
So you walked from the lock at South Bay into Belle Glade?
Yeah.
Where did they pick you up? Do you remember?
No, I really don't remember where it was. Belle Glade wasn't very big.
Yeah.
There weren't very many places there. There was a hotel and a post office and a grocery store, and it was probably at the hotel, I just don't remember, that was there on the road that goes into West Palm Beach.
The night, about what time did you gather on the boat? Do you remember when the wind started?
I think they were just starting early in the afternoon.
Yeah.
They kept coming.
Did you feel it when the mud broke? Did you tell when the big waves came, or did it just seem like the water just kept rising?
I didn't see because I was inside.
Yeah.
There wasn't any levee.
Oh, in South Bay there wasn't?
No. There wasn't any. That's why Bear Beach got it so badly, because it was just there, right there by the water. And then all the rest of us, because there wasn't anything to stop it.
Could you feel the one initial wave, or it just felt like the water just kept
No.
rising?
I don't think it was one big wave. I think it was spread out to start with
I
and
think so,
gradually
too.
came.
Yeah.
When you went to Clewiston, how did you get to Clewiston after the storm?
I went on a boat, and they took us over to, we went to Chosen, and then from there we went on the boat that I was on went to Chosen, and then on across the lake. But I can remember in Belle Glade on the canal bank, they had corpses laying out, dozens of them. Terrible sight.
Did Mr. Van Horn come back and work with the cleanup?
I don't think he really did that, but he did other work.
How long long was it before people started coming back and settling in and living again, I guess?
As soon as they could build back.
We have a picture that was taken in 1929. I guess maybe 6 months after the storm. And it looks like Belle Glade is rebuilt already.
Unless whoever labeled it for us, you know, we were off by a year or so. It just seems phenomenal.
Was it within the next year that they had rebuilt?
Oh, sure. They started.
A lot of them were.
As soon as they could get out here and start doing anything and start cleaning things up.
Can you remember what you were feeling the night during the night when you were going through singing the songs, the hymns?
Yes, I can remember not being afraid because I didn't have sense enough.
That's it exactly. That's it exactly.
Well, I thought if anything happened, I knew how to swim and that I could just swim and be all right. That's all it was. So we just didn't any of us realize how bad it was, I guess.
I guess
Except maybe Ivan that was trying to keep the pump going on the boat.
I think his eyes were so much on the engine that he was keeping running that he didn't stop to think about the storms. Look at the storms.
Were there people that were continuously coming during the storm, or did you all get there and then no one else came, or do you remember?
I don't know whether it was that during the lull or not, but there was a woman that did get on the boat after the storm had started, and it must have been during a little lull, because she had to crawl from one side of the locks to the other. And she was pregnant, so it wasn't a very easy job. But she did get on the boat.
Well, I can remember as long as Ivan lived, he always said, I had help that night, I wasn't by myself. And it was the supreme being that he felt was with him.
We've heard some interesting stories about Dr. Buck. Do you have any Dr. Buck stories? We've heard some cute things about him.
He was the doctor.
The doctor. He was kind of in charge, I guess, of things afterwards as far as organizing the cleanup and everything. I guess everybody went to him at some time.
That's all we had to go to.
Can you guys think of anything else you want to add? Did the locks at South Bay look anything like these that are here? Pretty much the same?
Very much. I think they were all built the same. See, the government built them, and I think they used one pattern for all of them.
Sure that they were. This is the way I remember it.
How the locks are here now, we were discussing it before you arrived. How open it is now. It wasn't that way. It was just a straight
wasn't
canal
open.
into the lock.
It was closed.
Right. There was no open canal on the other side.
I mean, the locks were closed, and we were inside of the locks, so the barge couldn't drift very far. Could have gone down, and down is about the only thing that could have happened.
Closed at either end, and you were right inside?
That must have been the way it was. I didn't remember that, except it had to be closed for this woman to crawl from one side to the other.
Right. So she would have had to crawl across that board plank there, the lock gate, actually, to get in.
Well, you see, the locks was full of water, so the barge was sitting up almost level with where you could walk across.
That's why it's hard when you see the picture. Sometimes it says that that's the barge, but you don't really see the water, and so it seems like that should just be a building that's on the land. It's misleading if you're not familiar with it, because it's kind of like a houseboat, wasn't it?
Yes.
That's what it was.
It was not a regular barge then.
No, they were building this highway through here, and the company that was building it had this houseboat for their men to live on. So they opened it up for the storm that night to the public.
Adam wants to know, this isn't about the hurricane, Adam just was interested in what it was like growing up in South Bay at, 15, 16.
It was fun.
It was fun.
Oh, yes, I wouldn't take anything for that experience.
It's, everybody was friendly. And when I was around 15 or 16, why, of course, it wasn't just South Bay, it was Belle Glade and Chosen. In fact, we had a little club we called the Belle Choso Club. And we all got together at somebody's house once a week, either in Belle Glade, Chosen, or South Bay. And we had a little club and paid dues. And if we went anywhere, we went together as a crowd. So it really was a fun time for all of us.
Where'd you go to school?
In South Bay, and then I graduated from Pahokee. We all bussed over to Pahokee.
The house that we lived in is still up here. Yes. It's close to the railroad.
The house in South Bay?
During the storm. It blew off the foundation, but it settled right down, and the posts came up through the house in places.
And where is it now? It's near the
It's up near where the railroad crosses the canal.
up by South Bay Grower.
Yeah. I remember when they were building that railroad, and they said they would soon be running a train over it. Well, way in the night one night, the train blew, and I woke up and jumped up and looked out the window. I said, I can't believe it. I'm having a nightmare. It was a train.
That would be scary.
Is that near the lawn?
Well, everything in South Bay is kind of near everything else.
Can't get very far away from it.
There was a lot of boat traffic though in those blocks.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
That came from the port.
Everything was by boat. Our mail, and was our mail still coming by boat then?
Oh, yeah, they had to go to
that's
Clewiston
right.
to get the mail.
Came from Clewiston.
Do you remember what the Bowles Hotel was like? It was right over here.
Oh, yes.
Is that a nice place?
It was a very nice place for the time of the time in life. When my mother and I first come to the lake, that's where we stayed. My father was an engineer surveying these canals through here, and he was out here before we were. So he sent and got us, and we stayed at that hotel. It was large, and it was nice as anything could be back in those days. And the grounds were beautiful. That was my first love of plants, was walking over those grounds. And they had a caretaker, and he would tell me the names of all the plants. And he had one plant out there that would go to sleep if you touch it. And that was something to me.
We've got seen a lot of pictures of it, and it just looked fantastic.
Do you remember what year that was?
I think it was 1910. A long time ago.
We talked to Bernie Boots. He was at Sebring Farm, which is just south of here.
Yeah.
He came up here to the hotel, I guess, after the storm.
There used to be a lot of tourists come through here, like your uncle's boat. He ran a boat from Fort Myers to Fort Lauderdale, didn't he?
I think he did at first, and that's how he got out here.
And then they built a hotel on Ritter Island. And I remember when we used to go to meet the mail boat, it'd come in right after night, and they got a signal for how many passengers they would have. They had a light that they would signal, telling the people on the dock how many people were coming for supper. So by the time the boat got into land, well, the supper was ready.
That sounds good. That sounds good.
Tommy's curious about the Haley's Comet.
Did you follow Haley's Comet when it was down the first time? In the area?
You're not old enough to see Haley's Comet the first time.
I don't remember.
Yeah, now, Adam's grandfather saw Haley's Comet the first time. Great-grandfather, I keep calling him that, saw it the first time. He was a little boy up north, and he saw it. And then he saw it again the second time he went over to the museum, and they had a second timers club.
Oh.
And he saw it there. He said it wasn't nearly anything the second time like it was the first. But he said they were afraid because all the newspapers and everything said that it would, that the tail would go across the earth and that there was poison gas in the tail and that you didn't want to be out when it did that because you would die. And he said that his mother made him close all the shades and that every once in a while she let him peek out the shade to see it, but she wouldn't let him look at it very long because the poison gas was going to get him. So he said he didn't get to see it a lot the first time.
Do you remember the eye passing during the hurricane?
I didn't understand.
The eye of the storm when it got calm. That was the next day, wasn't it? Didn't we have to?
9 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Was it 9 o'clock
It was at night.
Wondering if anybody wanted to leave at that time, thinking it was over.
I don't remember.
No babies born on the boat.
No. Could have happened, I guess.
Could have, yeah.
You don't recall any incidences other than the minister getting everybody to sing?
Not really.
Do you remember any of the songs that you sang?
Just him. I can't remember what they were.
I know the minister had a car, and after the storm, everybody would borrow the minister's car to go to West Palm Beach. You remember that? You did.
Well, it's because when we left, we didn't come back until our house was rebuilt. We rented a house in West Palm.
Did your whole family leave?
Everybody except my father. We had a store, and he had to take care of the store, what was left of it, and rebuild the house. So we went school year in there. And
We read an account, I just read an account the other day from Mr. Hardy. What's his son's name?
Lehman.
Oh, I had the father's name, I'm not sure what his name was. He had written his account of the storm. It was this was from quite a while ago. And he was from South Bay also, right? But they left and went to Sebring. And he said they tried to come back, and there were guards right outside Belle Glade and guards everywhere trying to keep people from coming in.
Coming in.
Did either of you lose any of your family?
No, we were lucky.
Janice, can you think of anything that was covered that you died?
I'm just curious about the eye passing. You said there was an awful lot of death after the sun came up the following morning?
Well, we saw people we knew that had drowned along. Not a lot of it, I guess, not then, but it's because we stuck to the road, and we're just on the road all the way. I say it was just that one morning when we walked to Belle Glade that I was near any of it.
Livestock had a tough time with it?
I don't think they had much livestock out here then.
Mr. Hardy told a story about going to his cow. He had left his cow tied up, and there was a black man that had a house by him, and he had gone down and told him to, if it looked like it was going to get bad, to untie his cow for him, and they had. And he said when he came back, he went looking for his cow, and he walked a long way, he said, and finally he asked him, he'd keep passing people, and he'd ask them, and they'd say, yeah, they'd seen this cow. And he said when he finally got to where the cow was, he said he didn't know how he knew it was his cow, but it was like just two long-lost friends. He said the cow came to him, and he went to the cow. He said it was just unbelievable that you'd have this relationship with this cow. And he said he tried to lead him back the way he had come, and the cow wouldn't go back on that straight path. The cow apparently followed the path that it had followed during the storm, almost exactly, because it went just way around, and apparently it was, from the looks of things, that was the way the storm had gone, and it wouldn't go back the normal way. He just said he finally had to follow the cow, but it eventually went back. Grand story. I can't think of anything else from you. Was Vernie Boots' brother on the barge with you?
No, there weren't any of them.
None of them.
They stayed in Stevens Park.
Well, he had a stepbrother, though, that he said was in South Bay.
Yeah. I imagine that he was,
Roy.
because he was, no, Roy is his brother.
Okay.
Yeah.
But his stepbrother, it was married my cousin. So, yeah, Bill Rawls. And he was, well, Bill and his wife were my uncle's daughter and son-in-law.
Oh.
So I know they were on the boat.
They were on.
They had to been on the boat, because I know that they got everybody that was close around.
What about people in South Bay that were not on the boat? Some of them, I assume, made it, but...
We were talking about the house that was like this one,
The gatekeeper's house?
where the postmaster, well, it was postmistress and her husband was a cripple in a wheelchair.
Yes, in a wheelchair.
So they wouldn't leave, and that house was standing right there the next morning, and they were fine.
It was there?
And our house was fine, except that it had lifted up our foundations and floated a long way away from where we were and across the canal. And we had some little chickens and some guinea pigs, and put them up on the breakfast nook table, and they were fine the next day.
Isn't that amazing? I think Mr. Brooks told us that Bill Rawls tried to get them to leave his farm and come down to the boat, and they would not.
He said the next day he came up to get him, and he came up the canal that ran by old, well, then was new 27, but old 27, and he came, it was really a ditch, it wasn't a canal, but it was full of water, and he came by boat up there and got the boys, and went back, took him back to South Bay there, and I guess from there they must have left too, because they were just, they must have gone too.
I think they lived in West Palm Beach near where we were for that year before they moved back home.
Most of the South Bay people seem like they was up in Hollywood for a while.
We did go down there and stay a week or so. As I say, we started to school, so we didn't stay down there as long as some of them did. But they were real nice to us. Saw that we had something to wear. And something to eat.
Mrs. Van Horn, do you recall any stories that Mr. Van Horn related to you after the hurricane? About anything that happened on the boat?
Well, it was hard. It was a struggle getting back to normal living. I don't know how long I stayed away, but it was 2-3 weeks.
When you came back, did you come back to South Bay?
We come back to South Bay.
And what did you live in then? Did you have a home that was able to live in? Or?
I think I was working for the construction company then that was building this road through, and he hauled all the piling for all the bridges between Belle Glade and Clewiston. And they had hauled a lot of them, and they washed away in the storm, so they had to haul more back.
So did you live in your house that was up here, that you said was still here?
We lived in it, but it had to have work done on it. See, it like it floated up, and then it settled right back down on the piling. And they had to pick it up and get it, and put new piling and put it back on the piling.
I think that's kind of like what happened here. This floated away, and then they found it and brought it back here to the site. I think they put it on higher pilings when they came back. I don't think the
Probably.
I think they put it
Well, our house didn't float away. It just settled. It came up and then settled back down.
I think they covered it pretty much, don't you think?
Things that we had floated across the canal, though, one miracle. We had a whole set of silverware at that time. That was a prize. So I put that in one of those things that you can roll up and tie before I left home. And 2-3 days afterwards, they found it in a field way across the canal there.
You got it down.
Got every bit of it back.
somebody broke in a store and got them bread, and so they had bread and syrup. She said for about 2 days after that, the canisters that you know because it was heavy, and it just kind of stayed there. Wow. Let a can of syrup. Okay. Wonderful. All it says is you allow us to get educated like in our educated. On it and make it turn yellow because it's full of fish.
There's a eagle's nest on the way up here. I don't know if you noticed.
Is that right? No.
Yeah.
Give me a second. Anytime.
Hi, I'm Heather Unwin.
And I'm Adam Salvatore. For the past 2 years, the West Area gifted students have studied the land south and east of Lake Okeechobee. This film is a culmination of that study.
Last year, we started by talking about our heritage and expressing our feelings in poetry. We combined our writings into a book called Beginnings.
We've gone over old newspaper articles about the 28 hurricane.
Stop it. Start right from the top. The only reason I stop is not because you made a mistake, but because you rolled your eyes. Okay, you look at it and you go, oh my God, oh yeah.
I thought
Okay.
What was my second line there? The first one of the second paragraph, I say.
If you make a mistake,
We've gone over.
Gone through old
Okay.
newspaper articles about the hurricane. That was good, Heather. Smiling.
okay, this is second go around. Whenever you're ready.
Hi, I'm Heather Unwin.
And I'm Adam Salvatore. For the past 2 years, the West Area gifted students have studied the land south and east of Lake Okeechobee. This film is a culmination of that study.
Last year, we started by talking about our heritage and expressing our feelings in poetry. We combined our writings into a book called Beginnings.
We've gone through old newspaper articles about the 1928 hurricane. We've read Lawrence Will's books and visited the museum in Belle Glade that was dedicated to him.
One of the best parts of this project has been the people we've interviewed. We learned about this area's early years, especially around the time of the 1928 hurricane. Art Horn, meteorologist with Channel 5, and Richard Turner, director of the... Give me sort of
One of the best parts again. Started off
Okay,
forward.
all right, how about this?
one of the best parts.
Heather, why don't we take you right from the beginning, one of the best parts,
Okay.
and we'll just edit this. Get back where you were.
One of the best parts of this
One of the best parts of this project.
Okay, squared away now.
One of the best parts of this project has been the people we've interviewed. We've learned about this area's early years, especially around the time of the 1928 hurricane. Art Horn, meteorologist with Channel 5, and Richard Turner, director of hurricane preparedness from the Red Cross, also came to speak with us.
We've seen history come alive. It is so important to preserve our heritage. We lose a piece of it with the death of each of our ancestors. Could we do that, everyone?
Yeah, take it
I
right
forgot
from
what goes after
take it
that.
right from the top.
What goes after? we've seen, after each of our ancestors. This is one of the last pioneering areas? Okay.
This was one of the last pioneering areas in the United States.
We've seen history come alive. Oh, God.
It's so important to preserve.
Okay. We've seen history come alive. It is so important to preserve our heritage. We lose a piece of it with the death of each of our ancestors. This was one of the last pioneering areas in the United States, and my great-grandfather
And my grandfather.
were a part of it.
This film is a tribute to all those who lost their lives in the 1928 hurricane and those who stayed to rebuild. It's our attempt to bond the past and the future.
Very nice.
What we can do is we can just edit the piece of you and piece
That
of
was
you
lovely.
together.
That deserves applause. That was wonderful. You guys.
Anytime.
It would be easy to forget what all those stout-hearted pioneers experienced, but the hurricane statue in front of the Belle Glade Library at McDonald Park stands as a silent reminder of the past, of the devastation, and of the strength of the people who survived the storm and stayed to rebuild, and to create the glades as we know today.
Lawrence Will says it best. After the storm, many a Glade's inhabitant had loudly declared that never again would he return to this accursed place. Some returned that spring, many of the remainder that following, most of the remainder subsequently. Okay.
Right from the top here.
Lawrence Will says it best. After the storm, many a Glade's inhabitant had loudly declared that never again would he return to this accursed place. Some of them returned that spring, most of the remainder subsequently. Their faith in this country has been... Start from their faith in this country?
Yeah.
Their faith in this country has been reflected in the growth of the towns and farms in the Glades. They had indeed gotten muck in their shoes.
Yeah. How about both of you from the top? Last part. From the top.
It would be easy to forget what all those stout-hearted pioneers experienced, but the hurricane statue that stands in front of the Belle Glade Library at McDonald Park stands as a silent reminder of the past, of the devastation, and of the strength of the people who survived the storm and stayed to rebuild and create the glades as we know today.
Lawrence Will says it best. After the storm, many a Glade's inhabitant had loudly declared that never again would he return to this accursed place. Some returned that spring, most of the remainder subsequently. Their faith in this country has been reflected by the growth of the towns and farms in the Glades. They had indeed gotten muck in their shoes.
You're doing great. I am proud of you all. You just are, they didn't know that yesterday afternoon at this time, and they know it now, and I'm real proud of them.
Under the hot light, you may be able to take it again.
I don't know. I see a future Laurel Sour. I'm not to say.
Period was interested in
We
most.
wanted you to tell us about how you, we looked at your tape again yesterday afternoon. We wanted you to tell us the part about where you heard the storm was coming and that your mother just chose not to go because of the car, you know, start there. And then up to you being in the water. You being in the water, and I guess the next morning when you see that your stepfather is there.
Okay.
Okay? Anything that you feel comfortable telling us, okay?
Okay.
Where in particular do you see something, John, if anything? Do I need to come to
The whole area where you are right
Yeah, I'd
now.
stop right now.
Before I mess it up.
Well, I was going to qualify it, say before you mess it up anymore.
It's going to dry up. It's going to dry
I can take a joke. I can take a joke.
I think no matter what we do, we're always going to get one somewhere. I just don't think it's, I think some of it's inside. Like, it looks like there's a glare from the inside, and I think it's the plastic, too.
Yeah, just the
It's wavy.
I think it's been cleaned
And we
so
got
much,
the
it's
cleaning
permanently
on the film.
frosted.
Oh, good. They have a picture of Jan's cleaning.
Okay? Anytime.
Okay. We moved to Belle Glade in 1921, and we were here during the 28 hurricane. We lived down 441, about a half a mile in across the railroad track, what's on the Glade prison farm now.
Glade Correctional Institution. There was, on Saturday, we had heard that the hurricane would pass us by. Sunday morning, my uncle went to Belle Glade to deliver milk and heard that it would hit us at any moment. So my stepfather asked my mother what she wanted to do. Did she want to go out or did she want to stay? She told him that if it was going to hit any minute, she'd rather be in the house than to be in the car. We had to go around the lake for 50 miles to start getting away from it. So all the family came, her sister and her husband, Pat's brother and his wife, and his sister and her husband and all their children. There was 19 of us in the house. We all had a big day with a big dinner and children playing and all, and that night we was gathered in the front room, and everyone was talking about where they'd go if they had to leave the house. Shortly after that, we saw water coming in the front door, so we couldn't go anywhere. Everyone wanted to go on the roof, so they cut a hole through the roof, which had been boarded for shingles and corrugated steel roofing. When they got it cut through, the water was up around my waist. We just floated the piano over to the hole, and everyone climbed up on the piano and out through the roof. One of the aunts had my baby sister, and my mother had my baby brother. So my brother and myself had our arms across the hip of the roof and was just laying on the roof. So first he would call my mother, then I would call her. After a while, she didn't answer anymore. The next I knew, I was in the water. I felt myself slipping, and I was under the water with things falling around me. My stepfather had told us earlier that if we was underwater, it wouldn't hurt us as bad as if we was above it, so I just stayed submerged. When it settled down, I surfaced in between swimming and being washed. I wound up inside the house on the roof, which was on the bottom. The house had turned upside down. The rain was breaking over my head, so I had to turn my back to it. And when it went down, which seemed that it didn't take too long, it was just beating me to death. I just had on a thin dress with a pair of boot pants on. I stayed there until I couldn't hold on any longer, and I felt my way around. And I found out the next morning I had stepped through the door and leaned back against the wall. And I could hear somebody upstairs, so I started hollering. But nobody heard me, so I went back to where I was. When I had stayed there as long as I could hold on anymore, I went back. That time I still heard them